If you grew up with a narcissistic parent, there's a specific kind of confusion that lives in your body. Not the confusion of not being loved, but the confusion of being told you were loved, constantly, loudly, while some part of you always knew it wasn't quite true. Today we're going to name exactly why that feeling exists, because once you see the mechanics behind it, you can never unsee them again. And honestly, that's the beginning of healing something you might not have even known was broken. Let's talk about the 7 disturbing reasons narcissists don't truly love their children. Not struggle to, not have a hard time showing it. Truly do not, structurally cannot, and by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why. Reason number 1. To a narcissist, a child isn't a person. A child is a mirror. This is the foundation everything else is built on, so stay with me here. Healthy parents look at their children and see a separate human being, someone with their own preferences, their own personality, their own right to exist as something other than an extension of mom or dad. Narcissistic parents can't do that. Psychologically, they're incapable of holding another person as fully real in the way you and I understand real. Their child exists primarily as a reflection, a walking, talking confirmation of their own greatness, or occasionally their own victimhood. That's why narcissistic parents get so disproportionately upset over things that seem small. Your report card wasn't really about your education. It was about whether you were embarrassing them at the parent-teacher conference. Your interests weren't really about what you loved. They were evaluated entirely on whether they made the family look impressive. If you've ever felt like your parent was more interested in how you made them look than in who you actually were, that wasn't your imagination. That was the entire architecture of the relationship. Reason number 2. Love, to them, is conditional, and the condition is control. Here's something that trips people up for years, sometimes decades, before they finally name it. Narcissistic parents often are affectionate. They do say, "I love you." They might even cry real tears at your graduation, your wedding, your big moments. And this is exactly what makes it so disorienting, because that affection is real in the moment, but it's not unconditional. And unconditional is the entire definition of parental love. The condition is compliance. As long as you play the role they've assigned you, the golden child, the achiever, the one who makes them look good, the affection flows freely. The second you deviate, the second you have a boundary, a different opinion, a life choice they didn't approve, the warmth disappears so fast it gives you whiplash. And what's genuinely disturbing about this is that it teaches a child from the earliest possible age that love is a transaction, that being yourself is a risk, that safety depends on performance. Kids raised this way often grow into adults who can't relax in relationships, because some deep, wordless part of them is always waiting for the conditions to change. Reason number 3, they see your needs as competition for their supply. Narcissists run on what psychologists call narcissistic supply: attention, admiration, validation, control. And here's the disturbing part that most people don't want to accept about their own parent. A child's needs and a narcissist's supply are frequently in direct competition. If you're upset, if you're struggling, if you need comfort or time or emotional support, that pulls attention away from them. And a genuinely narcissistic parent experiences that pull not as an opportunity to nurture you, but as a threat. This is why so many people raised by narcissists remember a specific gutting pattern, bringing a real problem to their parent: bullying at school, a breakup, a fear of failure. And somehow, within minutes, the conversation pivoted to be about the parents' feelings instead. Their parents' stress, their parents' disappointment, their parents' own similar experience, told at greater length and with more emotion than anything the child had just shared. If you learned early that your pain made your parent uncomfortable and that discomfort got redirected back at you, you didn't imagine that. That's a documented pattern, and it has a name. Narcissistic parents often can't tolerate their child having needs because it disrupts the family's actual emotional center of gravity, which was never the child. It was always them. Reason number 4. They can't tolerate your independence because your independence threatens their identity. This one is subtle, and it's genuinely one of the most disturbing because it doesn't look like cruelty on the surface. It often looks like excessive love, over-involvement. I just care so much. But underneath, what's actually happening is that the narcissistic parent has built part of their own identity around being needed by you, being central to you, being the authority you never outgrow. Your independence, your first real opinion, your first serious relationship, your decision to move away, your first no, isn't experienced by them as a normal, healthy developmental milestone. It's experienced as abandonment, as a threat to their control, sometimes even as a personal betrayal. This is why so many adult children of narcissists describe an almost eerie pattern where their parents seemed to actively, if subtly, sabotage their success or their relationships the moment those things started making the child less dependent. A cutting comment about a new partner, sudden concern about a new job that seems suspiciously well-timed, a health crisis that materializes right when the child is about to move out or move on. I'm not saying every instance of this is conscious manipulation. Narcissists genuinely don't always know why they do what they do. But the pattern, when you zoom out across years, is unmistakable. Your growth was never something they could fully celebrate, because your growth away from them meant less of you around to reflect their importance back at them. Reason number 5. They weaponize love as a reward and withdraw it as punishment. This is where it gets genuinely disturbing, because we're not talking about ordinary parental discipline anymore. Every parent sets consequences. That's healthy. What narcissistic parents do instead is different in kind, not just degree. They withdraw the entire emotional relationship as a consequence. The silent treatment that goes on for days. The sudden coldness that makes an 8-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 25-year-old feel like they've simply ceased to exist in their parents' eyes. And then, this is the part that really does the damage. The abrupt return of warmth once the child has sufficiently performed remorse, or simply once the parent needs something again. This is textbook intermittent reinforcement, the exact same psychological mechanism that makes gambling addictive. And it's devastating precisely because it works on children whose entire nervous systems are still being built around their relationship with their caregivers. A child who experiences this learns, on a level far below conscious thought, that love is not a stable, reliable resource. It's a prize you win through vigilance, and it can be taken away without warning, for reasons that don't always make sense. Ask anyone who grew up this way what their anxiety in adult relationships feels like, and I promise you, they'll describe something that traces directly back to this exact dynamic. Reason number 6, they can't actually see you when you're in pain because your pain isn't about them. I touched on this earlier, but it deserves its own moment because it's one of the most quietly devastating truths about growing up with a narcissistic parent. Empathy, real empathy, requires a parent to momentarily set aside their own perspective and fully occupy their child's experience. Narcissistic parents have a profoundly limited capacity for that. Not zero, necessarily, but limited, shallow, and almost always contingent on how the child's pain reflects on them. This is why you'll hear adult children of narcissists describe a specific aching memory, crying about something real, something that mattered, and watching their parents' face do something strange, not soften, not lean in, but shift into irritation or performance, or a kind of blank waiting for this to be over expression. Because on some level, your pain was an inconvenience. It demanded something the parent didn't have the internal architecture to give, and so children of narcissists frequently learn to stop bringing their pain to their parents at all, not because they stopped needing comfort, but because they learned, again and again, that asking for it cost more than it gave back. Reason number 7, and this might be the most disturbing of all, is that narcissistic parents often experience their child's separate identity as a wound to their own ego, permanently. This isn't a phase that passes once the child grows up. It's structural. It follows the relationship for life. The narcissistic parent needs the child to remain, in some essential way, an extension of them, an achievement to claim credit for, an audience to perform for, a legacy to be proud of, on their terms, forever. When the adult child insists on being a fully separate person, with different values, a different faith, a different politics, a different way of raising their own kids, the narcissistic parent frequently experiences this not as a natural outcome of successful parenting, but as a personal rejection that must be corrected, punished, or reframed as the child's flaw rather than the parent's failure to ever truly let them go. And here's the thing I really want you to sit with, because I think it's the piece that ties all 7 of these together into something you can actually use, not just something that makes you sad. None of this means you weren't a good child. None of this means you did something to deserve a parent who related to you this way. What it means is that you were parented by someone whose internal world was never actually built to hold another person as fully, separately real, and you spent years, maybe your whole life so far, trying to earn something that was never actually available to earn because the entire premise of unconditional love required a capacity your parent simply didn't have. That's not a reflection of your worth. That's a reflection of a wound your parent almost certainly carried long before you were born, one they never healed, and instead, without necessarily meaning to, passed straight down to you. In part 2, we're going deeper into what this actually does to a child's brain and nervous system over time, the specific ways it reshapes how you love as an adult, and this is the part I think you especially need to hear, exactly how people break the cycle, so that whatever was done to them stops permanently, right there, with them. What happens to a child's brain when love comes with conditions like these? The answer isn't metaphorical. It's neurological, and it's measurable. And once you understand it, so much about your own adult life is going to click into place in real time. When a child grows up in an environment where love can vanish without warning, where affection depends on performance, where their own needs are treated as inconvenient at best and threatening at worst, their nervous system doesn't develop the way it would in a secure environment. It develops for survival instead. The part of the brain responsible for detecting threat, the amygdala, becomes hyperactive, constantly scanning for shifts in a caregiver's mood, tone, facial expression, because in that household, safety literally depended on catching those shifts early. Meanwhile, the parts of the brain responsible for self-soothing, for trusting your own emotional responses, for believing that your needs are valid without needing to justify them, those parts don't get the consistent, responsive caregiving they need to develop fully. This is why so many adult children of narcissists describe themselves as either hypervigilant or strangely numb, sometimes both, depending on the day. That's not a personality flaw. That's an adaptation. Your brain built exactly the tools it needed to survive the house you grew up in. And this is where it starts showing up in adulthood, often in ways people don't connect back to childhood at all. The first place it shows up is in how you love. If you grew up learning that love is conditional, that affection is a reward for compliance, you carry that blueprint into every relationship you build afterward. Friendships, romantic partnerships, even how you parent your own children if you have them. You might find yourself constantly scanning a partner's mood the way you once scanned your parents'. You might feel a flash of anxiety when someone you love goes quiet, because silence in your original template meant danger. You might over-explain yourself, over-apologize, over-function in relationships, working overtime to earn a stability that a securely attached person simply assumes is already theirs. None of this is weakness. It's pattern recognition running exactly as designed, just aimed at a present that no longer matches the past that built it. The second place it shows up is in your relationship with your own achievements. Children of narcissists frequently grow into adults who cannot enjoy success because success was never actually about them growing up. It was about the parent's image. So even now, even decades later, hitting a goal doesn't produce satisfaction. it produces a strange, hollow feeling, an immediate pivot to what's next, because the internal reward system was trained to associate accomplishment with external approval, not internal fulfillment. If you've ever achieved something you worked incredibly hard for and felt almost nothing when you got there, that's not ingratitude. That's a nervous system that was never taught how to feel proud of itself from the inside. The third place, and this is the one that catches people the most off guard, chronic self-doubt about your own perception of reality. If you grew up with a parent who denied things you clearly witnessed, who rewrote conversations after the fact, who told you that you were too sensitive or remembering it wrong whenever you named something painful, you learn, young and deeply, to distrust your own mind. This is functionally the same mechanism as gaslighting in adult relationships, except it started before you had the language to recognize it, which makes it so much harder to untangle later. Adult children of narcissists often describe a persistent background hum of, "Am I overreacting?" even in situations where, objectively, they are not. That hum isn't a character flaw. It's the echo of a childhood spent being told your own experience wasn't real. Now here's the part I promised you, the part about breaking the cycle, because naming the damage is only useful if it leads somewhere. The first step, and it's the one people resist the most, is grieving the parent you needed but didn't get. This isn't about hating your actual parent, and it isn't about excusing them either. It's about allowing yourself to fully feel the loss of something you were owed and never received. A caregiver who saw you as a separate, whole person, who could hold your pain without making it about them, who loved you without conditions attached. Most people spend years, sometimes their entire lives, unconsciously trying to get that unconditional love retroactively from the parent who couldn't give it the first time. That pursuit is exhausting, and it is, almost without exception, unwinnable, because the capacity that was missing then is very often still missing now. Grieving that reality, instead of continuing to chase it, is often the single biggest turning point in a person's healing. The second step is learning to separate the story from the self. You were told, implicitly or explicitly, that you were too much, too sensitive, too difficult, not enough, an embarrassment, a disappointment. Those were never accurate descriptions of you. They were the language of a parent's own unresolved wounds, projected onto the nearest available target, which happened to be a child who had no power to push back. Part of healing is going back through those old messages one by one and asking, is this true, or is this just what I was told? And being willing to discover that the answer, almost every time, is the second one. The third step is building what therapists sometimes call earned secure attachment, which is really just a clinical way of saying you can learn, as an adult, the things you didn't get to learn as a child. You can learn that people can be disappointed in you without withdrawing their love. You can learn that your needs are not, in fact, a burden. You can learn, often through therapy, sometimes through deeply safe friendships or partnerships, that consistency is possible, that love doesn't have to be earned through vigilance, that you're allowed to just exist in a relationship without constantly performing for it. This doesn't happen overnight, and it isn't linear, but it is genuinely possible, and thousands of people have done it, and if they can, so can you. And the fourth step, the one that actually breaks the generational pattern for good, if you choose to have children of your own, or even just in how you show up for the people already in your life. You learn to notice the moment you're tempted to make someone else's pain about you, and you choose, deliberately, consciously, to do the opposite of what was done to you. You let their feelings be theirs. You let their success be theirs, without needing credit. You let them be a separate person, fully, even when that separateness stings a little. That single shift, choosing to see the people you love as real, whole, independent human beings instead of extensions of yourself, is the entire cure for what we've spent this episode describing. It sounds so simple when I say it out loud, and it is one of the hardest, most important things a person can ever learn to do. If you recognized your own childhood somewhere in these 7 reasons, I want to say this plainly because I don't think it gets said enough. What happened to you was real. It mattered. It shaped you in ways that are still shaping you right now, today, in relationships and situations that have nothing obviously to do with your parent at all. And the fact that you survived it, that you're still here, still trying to understand it, still working to build something different for yourself, that's not small. That's the whole fight, and you're already in the middle of winning it. I genuinely love to know which of these 7 hit closest to home for you, because these episodes get so much richer when I hear from people living this in real time. And if this helped you feel even a little more understood today, that's exactly what Mind Horizon is here for. So hit subscribe, because we're going to keep going deeper into this exact kind of psychology every single week. The patterns nobody explained to you growing up, and everything it takes to finally set them down. I'll see you in the next one.